Hi, Hubert. Thank you very much for coming to this important conference. I'm very happy to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So I want to ask you some questions
Sure.
about this conference to know your opinion.
Sure.
So the first one is, could you please give us your overall impression about the conference? What do you think about all the discussions we had this morning about this conference?
I think the discussions have been very open and very frank. I think they've highlighted a very important issue, which is that there's a need to engage the private sector in ACP affairs, and it's highlighted the fact that there isn't really an institutional framework that exists to even facilitate that dialogue. So the mere fact that this conversation is happening and a strategy is being put in place, I think is unprecedented, apparently, in ACP history. So I think that's a very positive fact that came out of this morning's meeting and the fact that the meeting's taking place.
Yeah, thank you. So what do you think, out of the many recommendations coming out of the conference, could you please highlight 2 or 3 key recommendations for you, the most important? What do you think about the most important recommendations?
Well, I think the key thing is now we've identified that there's a need to have an architecture for the private sector to engage in a systematic and constructive dialogue, both with the Commission and with the ACP Secretariat on a business strategy. The question is, within what framework? So if you look to the European Roundtable of Industrialists who interlock and relate to the European heads of state, if you look at the Commonwealth heads of state that meet with the Commonwealth Business Council on private sector issues, I think the key outcome for me as I look at this process today is the calling for a ACP Business Council that will interlock with ACP heads of state, which can create a very systematic opportunity to dialogue and advance some very pertinent and specific issues.
Yeah, so, and let's see in the future, are you positive when you're looking at the future? Do you think, what important steps should be taken to have a sound private sector support strategy in the future?
Well, I think the design process around the types of programs and the types of assistance, the private sector should be integral to the development of the draft strategy rather than a reviewer of a strategy that's designed outside of the ACP countries that will ultimately be implemented within the ACP countries. So I think that's a critical area that needs to be addressed, that the private sector gets called in much earlier and is part of designing the draft frameworks. So I think that's very important. The second thing I think is also important is the transference to actually create partnerships with the private sector to implement the programs on the ground. Over the medium and long term, there's going to be a routine level of resources and assistance going to various private sector organizations. Let's have a strategy which basically says we are going to invest in our partners, we are going to grow our partners, and we are going to grow with our partners on the ground. And we think that that is a game changer as far as the way that the development is done, because there's a political economy about how you engage with the private sector, about how development partners engage with bilateral partners as well as economic groupings. And this, I feel, is an opportunity that the EU and the ACP Secretariat should not miss.
Yeah, of course. And are you positive about that? I mean, do you think we will be able, the ACP Secretariat and the European Union, will achieve this objective of have this private sector support strategy? Are you positive when thinking about it?
I'm positive because I can just see that the economic growth and opportunity exists, and it exists independent of all of these processes. So that, I think, is very positive. But I think that, I'd really like to put a message out there to the European Union. The world is moving and changing at a pace. There are new development partners offering all sorts of different types of incentives and partnerships that are non-traditional. I think this is an opportunity for the EU and the ACP to trailblaze a new form of development in Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific.
Okay, so yeah, Hubert Danso from Africa Investors, thank you very much for your contribution to this video, and very, very happy to have you here.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.